Hi, I'm Dan Bryant, and welcome to the first series of Real Impacts, the podcast where we explore how organisations communicate with creativity and impact. Today, our focus is on learning and development, or L&D. Joining me is Peter Clark-Lewis, an experienced learning and development leader and founder of Reimagine Learning, a consultancy specialising in fractional L&D support for fast-paced and growing organisations. With a career spanning more than 20 years across major brands including Knight Frank, Compass Group and Mitchells & Butlers, Peter has designed and delivered learning strategies that drive real results, from award-winning customer experience programs to values-led leadership development. His approach is coaching-led and emotionally intelligent, and he's passionate about making learning relevant, flexible and above all human. Peter's work turns learning into action that makes a difference. In this conversation, we'll look at why learning should lead to real behavioural change, not just content delivery. We'll explore how self-awareness is a powerful entry point for leadership and team dynamics, why learning should be co-created with employees, and why follow-up is the key to making learning stick. We'll also touch on the importance of adapting learning across cultures, the rise of bite-sized tech-enabled formats like video and podcasts, and why timing and relevance matter far more than polish or scale. Peter also shares why he challenges the idea of learning culture and why authentic learning emerges naturally from good practice. This is an insightful look into what learning and development really means today. And if you're looking to make your L&D more meaningful, this is the perfect episode for you. Pete, thank you so much for joining me in our first series of Real Impacts. Great to see you after 15 years. Yeah, long time. So obviously we know each other, but for everyone watching and listening, can you just give me a brief intro as to who you are and what you do?
Yep. So I have been working in learning development for the last 20 years. So when I first met you, I looked after a variety of different sectors. My experiences in healthcare, education, government, offshore, estate agency, medical billing, all sorts of different industries. And I've worked for the last 15 years, working my way up the ranks until most recently being the head of learning development at Knight Frank, where I was there for the last 6.5 years. And I've now gone up and set up on my own, offering fractional learning to small and mid-sized businesses. And if you don't know what fractional learning is, that is all about being able to offer people development. So if you have a small or mid-sized business that wants to develop your people or yourself, and you want to improve leadership or management or self-awareness or any sort of learning skills, people development skills, I do that on a part-time basis without the overhead of a full-time cost or a full-time employee. So I can come in 1-2 days a month, work with your business, embed myself in your business, but still give you that development, that expertise and guidance and training. So delivering courses, delivering coaching, mentoring, whatever it is you need without that full-time cost.
And it sounds, obviously we were talking about it just outside. To me, it sounds like a no-brainer. And so we'll dive straight into the episode. Like you said, you've worked in L&D for a number of years. You must have seen some shifts and changes in that time. What have they been?
It's very different from 15 years ago. If I think back to when I first started, learning and development was all about delivering courses, right? It was content. It was how can we send people on courses? What they do after that doesn't really matter as long as they've attended. And that was the focus. That was, as a learning practitioner, it was all about churning out course after course after course. And you saw large corporations having a whole brief kind of brochure of courses that they could offer to their teams, and it was the more the merrier, right? And that was what it was. Now it's all about how do we make impact, how do we make a difference in a business, how do we partner with businesses to really make sure that they are getting that return on investment. Return on investment has changed. I think it needs to change a bit more. Personally, I think a lot of learning practitioners are there, and when you hear return on investment, you kind of go, okay, well, what does that mean? Sales. retention, employee engagement, productivity? How do I get a number to those things? Right? I don't think that's where we need to be. I think we're shifting away from that a little bit more to real impact and real in business impact. So are my team having better conversations? Am I more confident having those conversations? Is what I'm doing, is the learning that I'm getting helping me do my job better? Right? Those are the sorts of things that I think we need to focus on measuring and being impact. And they're harder to measure. They don't have a number to it, right? They're anecdotal. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm hearing around the business. I don't think I've ever worked with a senior leader that has said, how much have you increased my sales by? Is it 20%? Is it 15%? Right? I've never been asked that question. Yet when I'm asked to prove return on investment, most people go, how much? Give me a percentage against sales or on that. So it's shifting. How we're measuring return on investment is shifting. It's impact. We're moving from content to impact.
How have you approached some of those leaders who perhaps don't view learning in that way? Because I imagine, particularly in the space that you're operating in now, that's going to be more of a challenge, where any sort of spend is going to be more significant in the SME space. So how do you approach that?
Partnerships, right? It's about getting to know the people and the leaders that you work with. So being able to sit there and say, what is important to you, right? Most of the time, sales is a byproduct, right? Increase in profit. Everyone's there to make profit. An increase in profit is a byproduct of people doing their jobs well and people being confident in it. So if I can say, do you feel more confident dealing with your team members? Are you more self-aware? There's a huge impact on self-awareness at the moment, a huge trend in kind of people going, this is where learning starts. Understanding how I'm approaching things is the starting point for anything else that I do. And there's loads of tools and psychometrics out there that you can use to help do that. But that tends to be a starting point now of going, yeah, I'm self-aware. I'm aware of the impact I have on other people. And therefore, I know when I'm feeling more confident. I know when I am doing a better job or having a better conversation. So if you can get leaders to be more self-aware, they then start to recognize the impact that it has on the wider business, not just on them and their conversations that they have.
Brilliant. And then with regards to that, so that sounds like you're shifting, you're intending to shift perspectives around training to be more about the bigger picture and the ongoing sort of story and message. What else do you do, or is best practice around ensuring that training isn't just a one-off session on an e-learning course or one-off session in a training room, but it's more of an ongoing learning experience?
Yeah. So variety of different things. One of them is co-creation, right? So peer-to-peer learning, getting people involved in how they learn and what they learn. So one of the businesses I was in recently, we did a little poll over, okay, what are your top 3 management challenges right now? And we built the learning around that. It wasn't me coming in going, you need to learn how to prioritize, how to delegate, how to do all these traditional models that we would traditionally have gone away and gone, this is what makes a good manager. Do this, this, and this. And if you do these 3 courses, there you go. You'll be a great manager. It's about listening to actually, well, what are your challenges right now? And then building something that fixes those. So training doesn't feel like training. It feels like support. Right? It feels like helping somebody to be better at what they do, as opposed to it's a formal piece of learning or training or development. And I think if you can do that, if you can co-create, if you can do that, and you can then follow it up, so you also have nudges, videos, little kind of crib sheets, infographics, all of those sorts of things that reinforce that learning day after day, week after week. Once training is finished, then you get better traction. I always give managers, if I've got a team on a course, I will always send a separate follow-up to managers saying, these are the questions you should be asking over the next few weeks. This is what they learnt. This is what you should be asking. These are the sorts of things you should be looking for, because this is what they've talked about and that they've learned, so that you're embedding that over and over and over again. And it's not something where, oh, Peter's told us we have to do this, or we've discussed this on a course. Actually, my manager cares about it. My COO cares about it. The founder cares about what it is that I'm learning. And it's not just a tick box exercise.
Yeah. I imagine that is easier said than done in some industries and some operations. So we obviously both have a background in hospitality and catering. For a huge company with tens of thousands of members of staff, but if you cast your mind back to your learn L&D roles in that organization, how did you deliver what you just said back then?
I'm not sure we did back then, if I'm honest. I think we followed it up a little bit, but nowhere near as much as it's kind of expected now. I think that has been a shift that has happened over the last kind of 5 to 6 years. I think with larger organizations, it is about keeping it relevant, right? So it's about tailoring consistency, right? You take the word consistency, and people expect consistent messages and consistent training. Consistent training, consistent learning isn't about delivering the same course to every single person. Right? It's about delivering a consistent message and a consistent way of working to a greater audience. So I work with a company that has a whole team based in the UK and a whole team based in India. Right? And we've talked about behaviors, we've talked about values, we've talked about how do we embed, this is what we mean as a company, and these are the behaviors that we expect. Now, those behaviors are exactly the same in the UK as they are over in India, but the culture is different and how we deliver that training is different. So in the UK, it was very much like, we're delivering face to face. We are going to follow it up. We are going to do a half-day session. We're going to get everybody involved. With India, it's a different culture, and I was doing it virtually, right? So the course becomes shorter. It becomes more top-down telling with a little more structured conversation around what things mean. As opposed to the full immersion that the UK gets. It's about meeting people where they are, and that ensures consistency and helps embed it when you've got a huge dispersed workforce. Changing things, but keeping it consistent, but changing things to meet people where they are. It has to be in that moment that they need it.
I see with a lot of the work we do, I see a lot of organizations face that challenge with dispersed workforces, whether they be in one country or in multiple geographies around the world. And you've also got that cultural piece that the differences in learning and relationships to trainers and hierarchies and things like that. But to that point around meeting people where they are, how has tech helped with that over the last few years?
Well, I mean, COVID brought out Teams meetings, Zoom meetings, and all sorts of other platforms to help us do it. It's changed quite a lot over the last kind of four years since we first started doing everything online. When we were forced into it, it was very clunky. We tried to deliver courses. Lots of people tried to deliver courses that were designed for in-person online. That's changed, right? So we now understand a bit more about how people learn online, how people's attention span. So how we change slides, how we do more breakouts, how we have better conversations online. We've also seen a rise in video, animation, all those sorts of things being embedded into learning, because people's attention spans are shortening. Right? It's getting shorter and shorter and shorter as the years go on. Like we used to talk about the goldfish having a 5-second attention span, and you've got the memory of a goldfish. I think we're less than that now. Like actually, that's fairly insulting to a goldfish to say that we have an attention span the same as them. They tend to hold it longer than we do. So I think technology has helped us shift how we approach learning. Like you've got different modalities of delivering training to people now. and delivering learning. So whether that's videos, animations, peer-to-peer learning, Zoom meetings, Teams meetings, there's a variety of different ways of touching people now and being able to get that learning across to them.
And so linked to that, what role does storytelling play in sort of crafting an overall learning or training message?
Big message. Storytelling's been around forever, right? It's one of those modalities. I remember doing a course a few months ago where we were talking about how do you manage people? How do you gain engagement? How do you buy people in? And I went in and I told a story. Right, so I talked about how a manager I'd worked with thought he was doing everything right. Right, so he was holding regular one-to-ones. He was telling people what to do. He was giving them support when they didn't know. He was showing them how to do things. And when we talked to his team, they thought he was a micromanager. Right, and they were like, one of the team members was like, actually, I don't even think he trusts me to do my job. But he thought he was doing everything right. And when I told that story in that session, one of the people in there was like, you know, I think I do that. Actually, I think I'm probably a bit of a micromanager because I've done some of those things. I need to ask my team what they're like. That opened conversation for everybody else to go, oh yeah, actually, maybe I do this, or actually, I don't think you do. Or we had a much bigger conversation then. It was a conversation that gave impact to people. And that was through just telling a story. Right? So it creates that safe space for people. It creates a space for open, honest conversations where people feel free to share because they relate to it. If you can hear yourself in a story, you start to understand, okay, yeah, do I do that? Do I do it differently? Would I have approached that in the same way? And then you can talk about it, and that's where the real impact comes from. That's where learning comes from.
Absolutely. And just going back to your goldfish, I've got that goldfish stuck in my head now, and attention spans linked to storytelling.
Yep.
Tenuous in a way. Are you having to rethink how you tell stories based on attention spans? Because I certainly know we are in our space. And then as an overlay to that, have you noticed any generational differences in attention and learning and focus and absorbing learning? Is Gen Z different to their how they receive learning to millennials or other generations? Boomers?
Gen X, boomers.
Gen X, yeah.
I think two things on there. I think the way we tell stories has changed slightly. The rise in peer-to-peer learning has changed the way we tell stories. So people like to hear about people they know about or hear from people that they recognize. And I think that's important when it comes to videos, to animations. We did a whole piece previously where I've done animations for compliance training, for example. And we created a mini avatar of me and then used my voice. So people were then like, that looks like you and it sounds like you. And I pay more attention to it because it's relatable, because I recognize the person that is telling me the story. So I think that's changed slightly. Generationally, can be controversial. I don't think there's a massive difference in the way generations learn. The way we treat generations, I don't think changes. There's a load of research out there at the minute that says generations, they all want the same thing, right? They all want to be listened to. They all want to learn. They all want to progress. They all want to add value. It's what each of those things mean to each generation that is slightly different. So when you say I want to be listened to, every generation wants to be listened to, but what listening means something different to each generation. So for boomers that are slowly leaving the workforce now, like being listened to was, if I have something that I think will add value, then I am going to tell it and I expect you to listen to it because I've thought about it, and I'm only going to speak up if it adds value. For Gen X and like my generation, I'm going to speak up when I think I've got something to add, right? And actually, if you take that on board, great. If you don't, cool, right? Millennials were very much, I'm going to speak up anyway, regardless, and I expect you to listen to me. If you don't listen to me, fine. And we're seeing the same with Gen Z. I'm going to have an opinion, right? And I want you to listen to my opinion. You might not agree. That's okay. But I want you to listen to it anyway. And that's where we're seeing that difference now with generations, and people going, well, that way they're not listening to me. Well, because listening meant a different thing in different generations. So I think there's a shift. There's every generation always complains about the next generation. It's how they approach work. It's what they want to do. Just in interview skills with a business, and we talked about, well, they haven't done their time. Like, length of service matters, right? If I see somebody that's jumping from job to job after a year, I'm not going to interview them. And actually, job jumping, gaining new skills and transferable skills has become a new thing, right? People recognizing that actually, I worked in hospitality. That gave me loads of really good transferable skills that really work in corporate environments, right? 20 years ago, we'd have gone, no, you work in hospitality and that's where you stay.
Yeah.
Now, those transferable skills matter. But if you've got leaders who have worked up the way up the ladder, who are older generations who go, no, they're not transferable skills. They don't recognize transferable skills. That's when you start having issues and having clashes.
So it's a bit about redefining role models and what that career journeys aren't necessarily, or trajectories aren't necessarily like that. They can, there's a lot of talk now. There's about messy careers.
Squiggly careers.
Yeah. That's it. And what you said about previously, you were talking about meeting people where they are in terms of delivering learning. I suppose the same could apply with listening to people in different generations. So the boomers you were talking about, I mean, and this isn't a blanket approach. They might prefer in person or groups to be heard, whereas other generations might prefer some like online methods, for example.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to relevance, right? It's about, do I see the impact, and why am I here? What am I going to learn, and how am I going to use it? Because if I am only going to use it in 6 months' time, why am I wasting my time being here or doing something or watching a video or doing that thing if it's not relevant for me right now? That's the attention span piece. You have to make sure that learning and development is going in at the point where someone can go, I need this and I need it now. And it's useful now. And I can walk away following this intervention, however that is delivered, but I walk away and go, right, in the next 24 hours, I can use that. I can use what I've learned. And that is when learning makes an impact.
So we've spoken a lot about storytelling and a lot about sort of traditional learning in the sense of courses being authored by a company or delivered by a company. What are your views on peer-to-peer or user-generated learning content?
I think they're two different things.
Okay.
And peer-to-peer learning comes in two different forms, right? So peer-to-peer learning in its traditional sense happens all the time, always has, right? That's can you show me how to do this? How do you do this? How do you do that? Right? That happens all the time, leaning over the desk and saying, can you show me how to? Right? That's just peer-to-peer learning. Right? We just don't classify it as learning, right? But that happens all the time. You also then have formalized peer-to-peer learning. And that's taken more of a focus over the last few years, and rightly so. I think, like we've said before, like, people trust people they know. They like to learn from people they recognize. So peer-to-peer learning has real value and real impact when it comes to that. Peer-to-peer learning should be structured, I think, when it's formalized. So whether that's roundtables, whether that is hosted conversations or talks or podcasts or videos, right? That is peer-to-peer learning. It's structured, formalized. We're going to get you together and we are going to learn from this person. User-generated content is slightly different. For me, user-generated content is, oh, I've decided that I know something really well and I'm going to tell everybody about it and how to do it and teach other people how to do it my way. Right? That's okay, but I think it needs governance, right? Because everybody knows somebody who is great at what they do, right? And teaches everybody how to do that thing in that way, right? That's great, but it doesn't allow for any variation, right? And it's assuming that that person's way is the best way, not one of the best ways of doing it. So for me, user-generated content has to have governance on, right? Because Joe Blogs, who teaches somebody else how to do something really well, how they do that is really important. And not everybody is learning. Learning is a skill. It is something I've built up my knowledge of how to do over the last 15, 20 years, right? Not everybody is a trainer. Yet everyone thinks they can be a trainer. And it's one of those disciplines, right? It's the same with marketing, right? Marketing's a really difficult skill, but everyone thinks they can do marketing, right? Everyone thinks they can do social media, right? But actually there's methodology and there's science and there's detail behind that people don't know. So I think user-generated content, peer-to-peer learning needs some sort of governance from a learning perspective, adult learning theories, models, methodologies, understanding how people learn, meeting people in the moment. All of that really matters. And if you've just got Joe Blogs teaching other people how to do something, that doesn't take any of that into account. So I think you have to make sure that user-generated content is governed, not just put out there, because then you move back as well to content over quality, right? You move back to, well, we're just putting loads of stuff out there and then people are inundated with stuff. And how do you know what's good and what's not? So I think you have to govern it.
I just want to pick up on something you said there, meeting people in the moment.
Yeah.
So can we explore that a bit more, thinking about channels and different channels available to you when you're delivering training?
Yeah.
So there's been a big rise over the last, well, probably like 10 years actually, of internal social media type platforms,
Yeah.
and they really lend themselves to user generated content, but also short form video content, podcasts, etc. What role do different channels, other than the traditional L&D channels, what role do they play in a L&D strategy?
If they're curated and governed, they can play a massive part, right? I think it's creating that peer-to-peer learning, right? Goes back to, I trust people and I learn from people that I know. That's great. It's giving people the option of how they learn. And I think that's really important. So how do I digest learning? Is it from being in a classroom? We're seeing a rise of people wanting to go back to face-to-face. Is it through podcasts? Is it so I can listen to something in the car when I'm traveling? Is it something that I can flick through like a TikTok style video? Or is it an article that I can read? All of those sorts of things is about meeting people in the moment. It's about being able to say what works for my learners and what works for them, and how do I meet them and deliver learning at a time that meets them. I work with an estate agency at the minute. They spend so much time in their car, right? Podcasts are a great way of getting learning across to them, because they can flick it on and listen to it bit by bit. It doesn't matter whether they're listening to 5 minutes of it or to half an hour of it. It doesn't matter. It's about giving them learning that's relevant and that matters to them and that they want to listen and learn about in the moment, in a format that they can actually use that works.
Fantastic. That's music to my ears. Penultimate question. What core principle or mindset do you believe underpins a great learning culture?
Oof. So I have an issue with the word learning culture a little bit. So for me, there seems to have been a shift over the last few years, and I think it's always been there a little bit, but around HR owning cultures, learning owning cultures. Don't think that's true. No one owns a culture. A culture is what it is, right? Everybody has a culture. It might not be the one you want, but everyone has one. I think if you are trying to develop a culture, you're focusing on the wrong things, right? I think if you are trying to build a culture, you're focusing on the wrong things. If you focus on helping people do the job well, right? Helping them to be better, helping them to have better conversations, be more confident, culture follows. Like it just naturally follows from that, right? If you promote learning, if you help people learn, if you encourage people to learn new things and have an open mindset, right? So it's not even about the learning. If you encourage people to have an open mindset and question things and create a space where it is safe to question, culture follows. Culture just naturally follows. If you're trying to do stuff to make a culture, I think you're going down a tough path.
Okay, final question. Well, first of all, Pete, thank you so much for coming. It's been really great and really interesting talking to you, and great to catch up after all this time. So final question I'm asking all of my guests is, what do you love the most about your role, and what do you find the most challenging?
What I love the most is easiest, right? That is, I love it when people turn around to me and go, I wish I knew that 10 years ago. I wish I knew that when I started, right? It's giving people that and making that impact on people where they go, I needed to know that, right? That's what I've learned something from that. Or where you get that really cheesy, that aha moment where people go, yeah, actually that's me, or I do that. That's what I love. What do I not like about it? I don't like the red tape around learning. I think when it's very easy to go down I need to prove 20% increase in sales. I need to prove an impact, whereas actually impact is so subjective. And if you're getting people say, I feel better, I feel more confident, I think that is enough impact. I think that is what you're looking for. And I think when we move away from that and try and chase figures and red tape, that's when we go off path. And that's when we stop making an impact and partnering with people.
Yeah, I can completely relate to the red tape piece. We see a lot of that in various industries, and I'm sure a lot of people listening will be able to relate to that as well. But yeah, thank you, Pete. That was the last question. It's been great to chat to you and to hear all about what you do now and your experience, some of the really interesting experiences you've had. So yeah, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
You can find more episodes of Real Impact on your favourite platform. Follow us on socials and check out our website for more.